Expectant mom has pregnancy complications. Doctor faints when he sees this on ultrasound. Marielle's excitement about her first pregnancy was uncontainable until her routine checkup took a harrowing turn. As the doctor maneuvered the ultrasound wand, his face grew increasingly pale, hinting at an unspoken terror. Marielle's joy quickly transformed into anxious anticipation. When the doctor finally spoke, his voice trembled as he revealed the shocking image on the screen. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. Marielle sat in the waiting room, gently rubbing her growing belly. Every movement, every flutter filled her with hope and excitement. The ultrasound was supposed to be routine, a chance to glimpse her baby and hear its heartbeat. As her name was called, she felt a twinge of nervousness, the kind that always came before seeing the doctor, but she brushed it aside as first-time jitters. The sonographer's smile was comforting as she dimmed the lights and spread the cold gel across Marielle's abdomen. Marielle turned her head to see the screen, hoping to catch the first glimpse of her baby's tiny form. But as the ultrasound wand glided across her skin, the technician's expression changed subtly at first, then unmistakably tense. "Everything okay?" Marielle asked. The technician forced a smile and said, "I'll be right back," before swiftly leaving the room. Minutes felt like hours as Marielle lay alone in the darkened room, the machine still humming beside her. She kept her eyes on the screen, trying to make sense of the blurry shapes and patterns. When the door finally opened, it wasn't just the sonographer. Dr. Kendrick, her obstetrician, followed closely behind. He quickly grabbed the ultrasound wand and began scanning her abdomen with rapid, almost frantic movements. Marielle watched as his face contorted into an expression she'd never seen before, one that made her heart race. "What's wrong?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Marielle's eyes fixed on the screen, trying to catch any sign of what had drawn his attention, but all she could see was the grainy, swirling black and white shapes that told her nothing. The doctor paused, his fingers frozen over the machine's controls. "I'm going to refer you to a specialist," Dr. Kendrick finally said, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "There's something I need you to get checked immediately. It's important." Marielle's heart pounded as she dressed, her mind racing through every possibility. She tried to steady her breathing, but the image of Dr. Kendrick's pale face kept flashing through her mind. As she left the office, clutching the referral paper in her hand, she felt like she was walking through a fog, one that grew thicker with every step. At home, Marielle, trying to mask her fear, tells her husband, Luke, that her appointment is just a precaution, though she's struggling to believe it herself. Luke, always optimistic, reassures her with a calm demeanor, but the slight tremor in his voice hints at his own worry, which unsettles her even more. Days later, Marielle found herself in another waiting room, this one stark and sterile. She could barely sit still as she waited for the specialist. When the door finally opened, an older woman in a white coat greeted her. "I'm Dr. Rowan," she said. Dr. Rowan wasted no time, getting straight to the ultrasound. "I understand you were referred by Dr. Kendrick," she said as she prepared the machine. Marielle nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat as the gel was spread on her belly once more. The hum of the machine filled the room as Dr. Rowan began her examination. Then, for the second time in days, Marielle saw the look of shock, fear, and confusion on a doctor's face. Dr. Rowan steadied herself, her face losing all color as she processed what she was seeing. She quickly exited the room, leaving Marielle alone with nothing but the eerie hum of the machine. Marielle's eyes darted between the screen and the door, dread settling into her bones. What on earth had Dr. Rowan seen? Marielle's mind raced, trying to decipher the unreadable expression before Dr. Rowan rushed out. She heard hurried footsteps outside before the door flew open. A younger doctor stepped in swiftly, introducing himself as Dr. Patel. He took over the ultrasound without hesitation. "Hang tight, Marielle. Let me take a look." His eyes narrowed at the screen, and Marielle held her breath, bracing herself for whatever came next. He found the spot that had shocked Dr. Rowan, and his eyes widened, mirroring her earlier reaction. He quickly exchanged glances with the nurse supporting him. The nurse nodded and swiftly handed Marielle a piece of paper with a phone number scribbled on it. "We need you to contact this specialist immediately," Dr. Patel said, his voice tinged with urgency. "You need to follow up with a specialist immediately," Dr. Patel urged before bustling out of the room. As Marielle dressed, the nurse offered an apologetic smile but withheld any explanations. She felt an agonizing mix of confusion and fear. As she gathered her things, Marielle glanced at the nurse, hoping for answers. Marielle left the clinic feeling more anxious than ever. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Luke, but she barely glanced at them. She couldn't handle his concern right now, not without any concrete answers. Her thoughts were fragmented as she tried to fathom what the specialist might tell her. Days blurred into a haze of phone calls and appointments. Marielle moved mechanically through each day, her mind fixated on the looming specialist appointment. She was scheduled for more tests, each one more invasive than the last, leaving her emotionally and physically drained. The uncertainty gnawed at her, making each day blend into the next. Her life had become a series of waiting rooms and clinical settings, a stark contrast to her once joyous anticipation. Luke stood by her side each time, his support unwavering though concern etched deeper into his face with each passing test. Marielle tried to focus on the mundane tasks of daily life, but the cloud of uncertainty followed her everywhere. She found solace in Luke's presence, yet the worry was a constant companion. She noticed his attempts to stay strong for her, and it only made her more determined to face whatever came next. Each night, Marielle lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to Luke's slow, rhythmic breathing. Her mind swirled with thoughts of the upcoming specialist appointment, countless what-ifs playing on a loop. Her family called often, sensing something was wrong, but she offered little detail. She couldn't bring herself to voice her fears, not until she knew more. The nights were the hardest, the silence amplifying her anxiety and leaving her feeling utterly alone. At work, her colleagues gave her sympathetic looks, which only deepened her isolation. She could see their concern, but no one knew what to say. Her phone finally buzzed with an important call to the specialist's office. They scheduled her for an early appointment the next morning. The weight of that call brought a brief sense of relief, yet it was quickly replaced by a fresh wave of anxiety. Tomorrow, she would finally get some answers. The night before, Marielle could barely touch her dinner, pushing the food around her plate. Luke squeezed her hand, offering a silent comfort. He kept trying to make small talk, discussing baby names and nursery ideas, but Marielle's mind was elsewhere. The unease was palpable, casting a shadow over their usually cheerful conversations. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the sense of impending doom that loomed over them. Marielle wished she could share Luke's optimism, but her fears loomed large. In the specialist's office, the environment felt even more clinical, a stark reminder of the seriousness of her condition. The walls were lined with medical posters, and the sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air. Luke's reassuring smile did little to calm her nerves. They sat in uneasy silence. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. The new specialist, Dr. Patel, wasted no time, ordering another round of high-tech ultrasounds. Marielle felt a lump in her throat as the cool gel touched her skin once again. The wand moved methodically over her belly, the image of her baby flickering on the screen. Every time his brow furrowed, Marielle's anxiety spiked, wondering what he was seeing that kept his eyes glued to the monitor. Luke stood anxiously beside Marielle during her ultrasound, his tension evident. Finally, Dr. Patel turned to them with urgency, instructing that Marielle be admitted to the hospital immediately. Overwhelmed, Marielle struggled to process the gravity of the situation, feeling detached as Luke took charge of arrangements. She followed him to the car in a daze, as if moving through a dream she couldn't escape. Luke's hand never left hers as they made their way to the hospital. Once admitted, Marielle found herself in a private room with a view of the bustling city below. The contrast between the calm interior and the vibrant life outside was jarring. Luke busied himself arranging their things, trying to keep occupied. Marielle lay back on the bed, staring out the window, feeling the weight of her reality settling in. Nurses and doctors streamed in and out, each conducting tests and discussing findings in hushed tones. The atmosphere was tense, every interaction carrying a weight Marielle couldn't shake. She tried to listen to the medical jargon, hoping to catch a hint of what was happening, but it only fueled her anxiety. Luke stood nearby, observing every move, asking questions when he could. Each test felt like an eternity, her mind racing with possibilities. She overheard snippets of conversations, catching words like rare condition and multiple consultations. Marielle's mind spun with questions, each answer seemingly more urgent than the last. Luke tried to distract her with light conversation, but his efforts were in vain. The hospital room felt like a prison, each minute stretching unbearably as they awaited more news. Marielle lay on the examination table as specialists from various fields examined her one after the other. Each offered their professional opinion, rattling off medical jargon that made her head spin. Terms like anomaly and parasite floated around, each one more frightening than the last. Marielle tried to ask questions, but her own voice was lost in the sea of expert analysis, leaving her feeling more confused than reassured. Luke did his best to keep the mood light. He brought books, movies, and even Marielle's favorite snacks to distract her. Despite his upbeat exterior, his eyes betrayed his mounting worry. At night, hospital sounds filled the room, amplifying Marielle's anxiety. The repetitive beeping and distant chatter made it hard to sleep. Luke held her hand, whispering reassurances, but Marielle could feel the tension in his grip. As days turned into weeks, Marielle prayed for answers. She needed clarity, something that would offer a way forward. Each day felt excruciatingly long as the team of doctors worked to unravel the mystery. She clung to every word, hoping for a breakthrough. Luke joined her in these prayers, though he tried to remain stoic. Both of them needed some direction, something to quell the growing fear that loomed over them. A breakthrough finally came when a new doctor, Dr. Evans, joined the team. He was a cardiologist with a keen interest in Marielle's case. Dr. Evans reviewed her file and conducted several detailed echocardiograms. He seemed different, more focused, more determined to get to the bottom of her condition. His meticulous approach gave Marielle a small sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, an answer was within reach. Dr. Evans informed Marielle and Luke of concerning irregularities in both her and the baby's heartbeats, emphasizing the need for close monitoring and presenting possible surgical options, each fraught with risks. Though terrified by the thought of surgery, Marielle found hope. Dr. Evans' belief that, with careful management, they could aim for a safer term. Luke became her constant support, working from the hospital and handling updates to family, downplaying the severity to keep them calm. Marielle faced each consultation with determination, clinging to small victories like stable heart rates and improved fetal movement. The journey was emotionally taxing, but Marielle remained focused on their goal, each small improvement a beacon of hope for their future as a family. Every day brought a new challenge. One morning, Marielle woke up with a strange pain she couldn't explain. Dr. Evans ordered more tests, each one bringing a kaleidoscope of results that confused and frustrated everyone. The nurses and doctors rotated in and out of her room like clockwork. Their faces grew familiar, almost like family, but their expressions were always serious. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on everyone. Marielle's body was sore from the constant pokes and prods of the medical staff. Her mind buzzed with too much information to process. Luke, sensing her distress, arranged for her family to visit. Their familiar faces and warm hugs were a brief respite. But every visit also served as a reminder of what was at stake. Her mother would break into tears, and her father's stern face betrayed his worry. Life outside the hospital seemed like a distant memory, something Marielle could hardly relate to anymore. Her phone buzzed with messages from friends and colleagues, filled with well wishes and words of encouragement. She read them all, each one a small light in her otherwise dark world. Still, her reality was confined to the four sterile walls of her hospital room, making the outside world feel increasingly foreign and unreachable. Though she appreciated the outpouring of support, Marielle's focus was solely on bringing her baby into the world safely. Spiritual advisors began to visit more frequently, offering comfort through prayers and words of encouragement. They became a source of solace, their calming presence helping her feel grounded amidst the turmoil. Despite the growing spiritual support, Marielle knew that faith alone wouldn't carry her through the challenges ahead. The hospital's pastoral care department became a refuge for both Marielle and Luke. The pastoral care team brought a different kind of comfort, one that didn't come in the form of medical jargon or charts. Instead, it came in kind words, prayers, and brief, comforting visits. These moments provided Marielle with brief respites from the unending stream of medical procedures and tests, offering her a chance to breathe and find inner strength. As the pregnancy reached a critical stage, discussions about delivery options became frequent. Dr. Evans and his team gathered in Marielle's room to prepare her and Luke for what lies ahead. Each conversation was filled with cautionary notes, but also a sprinkling of hope. They laid out the risks involved with various delivery methods, making it clear that every option had its pros and cons. The gravity of these decisions weighed heavily on Marielle. The plan was to induce labor when the time was right, with Dr. Evans emphasizing the importance of Marielle being in optimal condition. Luke held her hand, listening intently as the seriousness of the situation weighed on them. Marielle prepared herself mentally, focusing on the journey ahead. When the day arrived, tension filled the room as Marielle was prepped and wheeled into the delivery room. Surrounded by the medical team, she clung to Luke's steadying presence. The induction began, and as contractions intensified, Luke's calming words helped her through each wave of pain. With each push, Marielle tapped into strength she didn't know she had. Amidst the urgency of the monitor's beeps and Dr. Evans' swift actions, Luke's supportive words kept her going. After a tense moment, Dr. Evans delivered a small, crying baby. But as Marielle barely processed this, a second baby arrived, stunning everyone in the room. It was twins. Nurses moved quickly to stabilize both infants, and the room filled with coordinated energy and relief. Marielle and Luke looked on in awe, overwhelmed with joy and disbelief at the arrival of their two tiny miracles against all odds. The months of uncertainty now a memory as they held their newborns close. In the days that followed, they adjusted to life as a family of four, grateful for every small milestone. Finally, bringing their twins home, Luke and Marielle felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. They had endured a difficult journey, and now, with their babies safe in their arms, their future felt brighter than ever. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.